Hey, say a few words. Okay, should I say a couple of things? Absolutely, go for it.
Well, thank you very much, Jim and Chang and Jim O'Brien for his kind words, and Ambassador for your warm remarks. And it's so great to be here and see so many old friends and talk about these important issues. I had a wonderful time with Romania when I was NATO commander, and I was lucky enough to work with many of you in Romania from 2012 to 2016, and it's just great to see the progress. But I want to share with you 3 or 4 key things that I took away from Romania. First of all, I was a big fan of President Constantinescu. He was a real leader. He was a man of courage, he was a man of vision, and he was a man of history. And when I made my first visit there in 1998, he took me up to the hunting lodge. As we were driving up to the hunting lodge, he pointed out, he said, "That mountain," he said, "that's where your CIA put the agents. Every month, a new agent would parachute in, and he would be captured. He would be interrogated. He would bring in the next agent, and then he would be shot." It was really a sobering thought. Now, that information on that program has all come out now, but at that time, Americans didn't really understand what the Eisenhower administration had tried to do with the rollback strategy. We lost a lot of good men. We tried really hard to bring freedom and democracy to Eastern Europe in the 1950s, and we weren't very successful. But we tried, and President Constantinescu knew it and appreciated it and educated me, and I learned a lot from him. On that same visit, I had dinner hosted by Minister Babiuch, and Jim, you were there. And I asked him, as we were talking about things, I had to be careful because I didn't want to solicit. I'd already been warned by the Secretary of Defense that, we weren't going to have any more NATO enlargement. He told me to stop talking about it. Okay, but I had already had people approaching me and asking for it, and I found a way to ask Minister Babiuch what he thought about NATO, and I said, have you thought about NATO enlargement? He said, yes, we have. I said, well, would you, if NATO were going to enlarge again, would you want to be in NATO? He said, yes, we do. I said, well, we were going out of our way to be nice to Russia. We'd created the NATO-Russia Council, and President Clinton had a relationship with Boris Yeltsin. Vice President Gore had a relationship with Viktor Chernomyrdin, and so I had a Russian 2-star working for me in my headquarters, who was there to maintain command and control of a Russian battalion that was in Bosnia as part of the NATO force under separate chain of command, of course, going through this Russian 2-star. So I asked this question very carefully of Minister Babiuch because I didn't want to be leading the witness, so to speak. But I said, well, does it have anything to do with Russia? He said, yes, of course. I said, well, are there some incidents that people in Washington may not understand? Are there any specific incidents you could cite that I could explain to people kind of the feelings here? I expected him to say something like, yes, at the last conference, the Russian ambassador shoved me in the men's room, or something like this. He said, there are many incidents. He said, in 1878, he said, Russia came through our country to deploy forces, and they took our province of Bessarabia. It's true. It's true. There were many incidents then and in World War I and so forth. Someone gave me a book on Romania written by a scholar, and the title of it was Friends Like These, because Romania has always been a very special country in a very difficult part of the world. And when I traveled there, I always felt like I was, right next door to the Italian peninsula. But there's a lot of terrain and a lot of other groups in between. I've had great Italian food in Romania. And And it's just, it's an entirely different country. But it's a country of incredible courage and vision. You've got great business. You've got great software engineers. You've got a very well-educated group of people there. I think the business future is bright. But I will always remember my colleague, General Desideratou, because he was a very well-educated, a very soft-spoken man. And when we were really in trouble in Kosovo, he helped us. The first thing he did was he went with me. We saw President Constantinescu, and we asked Romania to give us their airspace so that we could fly through Romanian airspace and come in from the back door and surprise the Serbs in Kosovo. The whole idea in that campaign was escalation dominance. You had to convince Milosevic he couldn't win. He's a rational man. Once he realized he couldn't win, he's going to give up. But he's a stubborn man. And so we had to escalate the airstrikes. And one way to do it was not only to come in over the Adriatic, but to come around behind and spread his air defense and so forth. And Romania was very generous in that, and also in closing the border. To win a war, you have to isolate the theater of operations. And Romania was very faithful in doing that. And so on the 10th of June, we finally got the UN Security Council resolution that ended the war. Milosevic had signed it. Jim O'Brien was one of the key people working with Madeleine Albright to get that done. And Victor Chernomyrdin and Finnish President Ahtisaari were there and persuaded Milosevic to sign. He pulled out all his forces. He agreed, you're going to let a UN mission go into Kosovo. So I came, I finally, when it was signed, it was about 8 o'clock at night in Europe. But I was told it was going to be signed, so I actually left my headquarters. I was on the golf course. And Javier Solana called me, and he said, he was a NATO Secretary General, he said, Wes, he said, they said it could not be done with air power. You did it. He said, you will be my friend for life. No one ever told me I'd be their friend for life, not even my wife. But I shot my lowest score ever in golf that night. So I got a good night's sleep. The next morning I came to the office and they said, the Russian battalion in Bosnia is crossing the Drina. And so it was a crisis for NATO. It was, Putin was behind it, actually. Yes, Vladimir Putin, yes, even then, he was behind it. And the idea was to run down, seize the Pristina airfield, embarrass NATO and split Kosovo, take over the north part and where the minerals are. I can't explain it. It's a mercantilist attitude, but for some reason it was all about the mineral wealth of northern Kosovo. And so anyway, we went through that day, and sure enough, the Russians went there, and the next day we waited anxiously for the Americans to get there. And before the Americans and NATO could get there, the Russian battalion was there, and there was a big scene with Michael Jackson, who was a British officer, and he said, okay, I don't want to start a problem here. And he backed off, and on Sunday, we knew that the Russians were loading their aircraft to bring in several additional regiments of airborne soldiers. Now, don't ask me how we knew this, because I can't tell you. But we knew, and we even knew what units they were. And so we had a real problem on our hands. And so, but the Russians were still not quite where they are today. And so they actually asked. Well, they went to Hungary first, and they said, "Give us overflight so we can fly our reinforcements into Pristina." The Ukrainians have already given it to us. They'd already been to Ukraine and said, "You may as well give us oversight because the Hungarians have given us oversight." And the Ukrainians said, "Oh, okay." Hungary said no. Then they went to Romania. They went in, and it was a Sunday. General Desideratou was there. And the military attaché went in and put his finger in Desideratou's chest and said, "You give us overflight of Romania or else. Desideratou said no. He said no. And he was threatened in many ways. And he stood up to it and he said no. And you know, that's a pretty tough thing if you are a Romanian general and you've grown up under the gun of the Warsaw Pact, and that's how you got your start, and you realize everything about Russia, the history, the brutality, the determination, the long memories. Desideratou was a courageous man, and he, Andras Shimony in Hungary, and Boyko Noev in Bulgaria, each challenged by the Russians, each said no. They saved the NATO mission in Kosovo. They ended the Russian effort to disrupt everything. Of course, Putin made sure that General Ivanov, the Russian three-star behind all this, got a medal, but it was a medal for nothing. And after a couple of years in Kosovo, the Russians gave up on it and left. It didn't do anything. So Romania had a vital role to play, and it still wasn't in NATO. And I made sure that people in the United States, to the best of my knowledge, could understand how important Romania was. I look at Romania today, and I'm so proud of Romania. Of course, you're a member of NATO. Thank goodness for that. But more than that, what you're doing in the region is so significant. You've accepted the U.S. base there and supported it well. You're accepting Romanian refugees. God help us. I hope we don't have any more, but we don't know what's going to happen. You've borne the brunt of many propaganda efforts to disrupt Romania. You're helping Ukraine export its grain at great cost. You're facing across the estuary Transnistria, which still has the remnants of the Soviet 14th Army there, 3 brigades, and you're keeping a watch on all of that for NATO, and you're cooperating closely with Ukraine in ways I'm not going to discuss here. I just want to say that thank goodness for Romania. It's a great country, it's a great people, and we love you for being with us in NATO. Thank you very much for this award. It's a great honor. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you